right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a deep dive into the source data stage of business data analytics.
Yeah, this is where it all begins.
It's like, good data is the foundation of any solid analysis.
Right, but you wouldn't believe how much work goes into making sure that data is actually good before we even start crunching numbers.
It's like detective work. Thankfully, we have the International Institute of Business Analysis, or the IBA.
The IBA, yep.
They're going to be our guide for this crucial first step.
Exactly. Like, imagine building a house. You wouldn't just start, laying bricks without a solid foundation.
And a blueprint.
Right. This stage is all about making sure we're working with the right stuff before we even think about analyzing it.
Okay, so let's unpack that blueprint. What does the IBA tell us?
Well, they start with some really key questions that analysts need to ask right away.
Right off the bat, what kind of questions are we talking about?
Like, what data do we actually need to answer the business question?
Okay, makes sense.
And is it even available?
Yeah, I mean, that's important.
Then, if we need historical data, how far back do we need to go?
It's like figuring out what clues we need. Do those clues even exist?
And if they do, are they reliable?
It is a lot like detective work.
Analysts are kind of like detectives trying to piece together a story from the data.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole question of structured versus unstructured data.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Structured data, it's all nice and organized, like a spreadsheet.
Right, neat and tidy. But unstructured data, that's like trying to make sense of a mountain of emails.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Social media posts.
Customer reviews, yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Definitely a challenge.
This is where the business analyst really steps up as the interpreter.
Interpreter.
Or liaison, yeah.
I see.
They have to understand what the data means. Not just crunch the numbers, but figure out what it all means for the business.
So they're kind of like translators?
Yeah, exactly. Bridging the gap between the data scientists who love their numbers and the business people who need to actually make decisions.
It's about communication, making sure everyone understands each other.
Exactly. Once they have a good grasp of what data they need,
Okay.
that's when they move to the next stage.
What's that?
Determining data sets. This is where things get really specific. They start looking at, data types,
Like numbers.
dates, text, all that good stuff.
Each type has its own quirks.
You got it. And then there's the complexity of the data.
Complexity.
We're not just talking about tracking one thing.
Right.
Sometimes it's 100 different variables, all interacting.
Oh, wow.
That's what data dimensions are all about. How much information are we actually capturing?
And then sample size.
Right. How much data do we need? A little or a lot?
And then how do all those pieces of data connect?
Exactly. Data relationships.
It's like a puzzle, right?
Absolutely. Each piece needs to fit.
To get the full picture. But it's not just about collecting any data.
Oh, no. It has to be valuable.
Valuable to the business.
Right. That's where the 5 V's come in. It's a key framework for evaluating data sets. Oh, tell me about the 5 V's.
Well, there's volume. That's the amount of data.
Volume, okay.
Then velocity, the speed at which it's generated.
Got it.
We've talked about variety, the different types.
Right.
And veracity.
Veracity, that's trustworthiness.
How accurate and reliable is it?
Exactly. Inaccurate data can lead to,
Oh, yeah. Big problems.
big problems.
And finally,
The most important V of all,
value.
it's got to be useful to the business.
Right. It's not enough to just have a ton of data. It has to mean something.
Exactly. That's where the analyst's judgment comes in. They have to weigh the costs and benefits.
See if it's even worth collecting.
Exactly. Sometimes a smaller, more focused data set is more valuable than a massive one that is just full of noise.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack. You have to sift through a lot to find the truly valuable stuff.
That's a great way to put it. Now, once they've considered the 5 V's and they know what data sets they need, they move on to data collection. But before we jump into that,
Okay.
I want to touch on data lineage.
Data lineage. What's that?
It's all about documenting where the data comes from,
I see.
how it's been transformed, and where it's stored. It's like a map of the data supply chain.
So if you need to trace your steps.
Exactly. You could see where it all came from.
Like breadcrumbs.
Exactly. It's essential for, good data governance.
Makes sense.
So we've planned our collection.
Right.
We've got our data sets. And we understand data lineage.
What's next?
Well, now it's time for the actual data collection phase.
The action starts.
There are 2 main approaches, passive and active data collection.
Okay, tell me more about those.
Well, passive data collection is kind of like security camera footage.
It's already there.
It's being generated as part of normal business, just waiting to be analyzed. Like, think about website traffic data.
Or customer purchase histories.
Exactly. Now, active data collection, that's more like a targeted survey.
You're going out and getting it.
Yeah, you're actively gathering the information you need.
So it's more focused.
Right. But no matter how you collect it, it still needs to be validated.
Validated.
Yeah, you have to be sure it's accurate.
Oh, right, of course. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly. So the IBA outlines several key characteristics of good data.
Okay, what are they?
Well, first, accuracy. Is it correct?
Yeah, if it's full of errors, there's no point.
Right. Then there's completeness. Is anything missing?
Like a puzzle with missing pieces
Exactly. And then consistency.
across different sources,
You got it. And uniqueness.
making sure we're not dealing with duplicates.
Right. And finally, timeliness.
Is the data up to date?
Because outdated information, well,
Nobody wants that.
nobody wants that. So data validation is like a health checkup.
Before you let it loose.
Exactly. And it's often a team effort.
A team effort.
Yeah, analysts, data scientists, and the business stakeholders, they all work together.
To make sure the data is reliable.
And that it meets the needs of the business.
This has been really fascinating. I'm starting to see how important this stage really
It's
is.
foundational.
It's not just about grabbing any data.
Oh no, it's about getting the right data and making sure it's trustworthy. Like you said, it's like the foundation of a skyscraper.
If the foundation is weak.
The whole thing's at risk.
Exactly.
And for those who want to really dig in, I highly recommend the source data table from the IBA material.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good resource.
It outlines everything, tasks, techniques, all of it.
We'll make sure to include that as a download for our listeners.
Great idea.
Okay, so moving on, that source data table you mentioned, it sounds like it's packed with useful information.
Oh yeah, it really is. It breaks down all the tasks, techniques, and skills you need for this stage.
Like a cheat sheet for data detectives. Okay, I'm game. What kind of tasks are we talking about?
Well, the first one is planning data collection, which makes sense, right?
Yeah, you got to plan before just jump in.
Exactly. This is where you define the scope of your data collection. What are we collecting? Where are we getting it from? And what are we using it for?
So it's like creating a roadmap for your data adventure.
I like that. You need to pack the right tools and maps. Then we move on to determining data sets, which we kind of touched on earlier.
Right, getting specific about the data itself.
Yeah, looking at data types, dimensions, sample size, how it all connects.
It's like choosing the ingredients for your data meal.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Making sure you have the right mix for a delicious and informative outcome.
And then, once you have your recipe, you actually go and get the ingredients. That's collect data, right?
You got it. This is where those passive and active collection methods come in.
Right, the security cameras versus the targeted interviews.
Exactly. And then, of course, validate data. Can't forget that step.
Making sure our data is healthy and ready to go.
It's like quality control. You wouldn't build a house with, faulty bricks, would you?
Definitely not. So we've got our tasks. What about techniques? What tools do data detectives use?
Ooh, there are some really interesting ones. One that stands out is data profiling.
Data profiling, what's that?
It's basically analyzing the characteristics of a data set.
So you can understand it better.
Yeah, you see its structure, its content, its quality. It's like giving your data a medical checkup.
Oh, I see. Make sure it's healthy before you start using it. What else?
Then there's data discovery, which is all about exploring and finding new data sources.
Sounds exciting, like panning for gold.
Exactly. You're sifting through tons of information to find those valuable nuggets of insight.
You never know where you'll strike it rich. And I'm guessing there are techniques for cleaning and transforming data.
You bet. Data cleaning is all about fixing errors and inconsistencies, like polishing a rough diamond.
I see. And data transformation.
That's about converting data from one format to another, making it usable.
So it's like translating a book.
Exactly. Making it accessible to a wider audience. But you need more than just techniques and tools.
Right, you need the right skills.
Absolutely. The IB highlights a bunch, but analytical thinking is key.
Makes sense. You got to be able to think like a detective, right?
Oh, definitely. See the patterns, draw conclusions. But you also need to be able to explain it all.
Right, communication is key.
You got it. Explain complex stuff in a way that everyone understands. It's like being a data storyteller.
Weaving a narrative.
Exactly. And of course, data literacy, which means understanding data concepts.
Speaking the language of data.
Fluent in data, yeah. But there's one more I want to mention, problem solving.
Oh, yeah, I bet there are a lot of problems to solve in this stage.
All the time. Missing data, inconsistencies, conflicting information. You got to be able to think on your feet.
Like a data MacGyver.
I love it.
I'm really seeing how crucial this source data stage is. It's not just about the data itself.
No, it's about getting it right, making sure it's solid. It really is like the foundation of a building.
If you don't have a strong foundation.
The whole thing crumbles.
Exactly. And for anyone who wants to go deeper,
the source data table is a great resource. Seriously, it lays it all out.
Tasks, techniques, skills, the whole 9 yards. We'll definitely share that with our listeners. Okay, so moving forward, we've talked about the tasks and the techniques and the skills, but what about the impact? Like, how does all this work in the source data stage actually help businesses?
That's the big question, right? I mean, when you make sure you're working with good data,
right,
it means businesses can make better decisions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Improve how they do things, and really get ahead of the competition.
Can you give me, some real-world examples of how this works?
Absolutely. Let's say you're a retail company, right? and you want to manage your inventory better
Okay, yeah.
by analyzing your sales data, figuring out who your customers are.
And what are they buying?
Exactly. And, looking at seasonal trends, all that stuff we gathered in the source data stage,
Right.
you can predict what people will want.
So you have the right products.
Exactly. And you don't end up with a bunch of stuff you can't sell.
No more guessing games.
Exactly. Or let's say you're a healthcare provider
Okay,
and you want to, help your patients get better
of
by
course.
looking at patient records, their treatment history, even clinical trial data,
Oh, that good stuff.
all carefully checked and validated, of course.
Right.
You can start to see patterns,
I see.
figure out what treatments work best.
And give people more personalized care.
Exactly. Data can literally save lives.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
And the possibilities are endless. I mean, think about marketing campaigns.
Oh, yeah, targeted ads.
Right. Or financial models that can predict what the market's going to do.
It all starts with good data.
It all comes back to that source data stage.
So it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about using data to make a real difference.
Exactly. And here's the thing. It's not a one-time thing.
What do you mean?
The source data stage. It's an ongoing process.
Oh, okay, so it never really ends.
Well, businesses change, right? Their data needs change. New data sources pop up. Old data gets stale. You have to adapt.
So it's like a garden. You have to keep tending to it.
I love that. You got to weed, prune, make sure it's healthy. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question.
Okay, shoot.
If you had to figure out how valuable a data set was for your business, what would you look at?
That's a good question.
What factors would matter most? How would you decide if it's worth the effort to collect and analyze it?
I guess it depends on, what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on the business and their goals.
So we all need to be thinking about this.
Exactly. If you want to learn more, really dig in, that IBA source data table is a great place to start. Well, make sure you have access to it.
Awesome. So I think that wraps up our deep dive into the source data stage.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground.
We learned how important it is to have good data and how much work goes into getting it. It's the foundation of everything.
Without it, you're building your analysis on shaky ground.
Exactly. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, the journey of 1,000 insights starts with a single, well-sourced data point.
Until next time, happy data hunting.